for this house as the house provides for us. We thank you, and so be it. It is hard to believe, but it is the last day of the month. So all that talk that we started the year, right, with the New Year resolution, hopefully we have implemented all the New Year resolutions that we kept with, and here we are, right, learning even more. And perhaps tonight, once I put on the screen, we can also bring simplicity to one of our aims, right, to one of our goals of this year of 2026. So with no further ado, Kirsten will talk to us about simplicity of the heart in a complex world. Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you, Leo. Good evening, everyone. Wow. What a way to begin a presentation, but God reminding us the complexities of the love of a mother needing to focus her mind on one thing when you hear your child suffering. Yeah. Simplicity is not the absence of knowledge. It's not, some people might think of the word simpleton. Oh, he's a simpleton, referring to someone who's without any knowledge, without any intelligence, who lacks any inner resources. But simplicity, in actuality, is something far greater. On one side, we have complexity. On the opposite end of that spectrum is simplicity. And simplicity of the heart, what is it? It is simply purity of intention, humility, and sincerity. And what is so beautiful is this idea of distillation. Does anyone know what the process of distillation looks like when you distill water or other things, beer? You take the raw material and it goes through this process again and again until it gets down to a very fine, specific product. So it's a refinement process, distillation. So simplicity is the distillation of wisdom. It's taken all this information and distilling it down to its core information for what you need. Because there's so much out there. There's so much knowledge. There's so much to learn from. And we often can become consumers without even realizing it. Because the ways in which social media works, the way marketing works, the way they use neuroscience in the store and in many other areas of the world, you wouldn't even believe, all to veer us in one direction or another. Most of the time, it's towards consumerism. Sometimes it's towards positive things. It's towards helping people get into programs that are beneficial for them. But I digress. It's not about being simple-minded, but it's coming to a point where you don't need the armor of complexity or the mask of the ego. So let me give you an example of this. And forgive us because we will use an example that comes from the world that we sort of live in, which is the medical field. So you can see a vast difference when usually every summer, new graduate physicians come on as residents to the hospital. And you see them and their behavior and as they're practicing medicine, and you compare them to the older, longer standing physicians that have been working for like 20, 30 years. On one hand, you have a set, well, hopefully well-intentioned, but sort of frantic, unsure, kind of unsettled group of individuals there's just so much knowledge that they haven't yet quite distilled to perfection. So for instance, You'll have a head trauma come in through the ER, and a resident who's brand new doctor, he's frantic, he's nervous, his heart is pumping really fast, and he's trying to remember all the ABCs of everything he has to do. And in walks the older doctor. And he's talking away and he's doing all this. And then he starts sewing up the man and he's talking to the nurse like, hey, how was your birthday? And he's doing all these things. And you're like, my gosh. And you turn over and you look at the resident. The resident's just like this. Like trying to follow the steps of the attending. But what is the difference between the two? One still has the complexities in their mind of so much knowledge. They just got out of school. And the other has already distilled their knowledge down to what they need. They know what they need to do. They have that intuition. And some of the best providers, whether they're physicians or nurse practitioners or what have you, are the ones that don't have the mask of the ego. They work in a team. And today we're going to talk about that as well. That connectivity, connection is so important. When we are talking about living simply, you might think, well, should I go live out in the woods? Right now, like on YouTube, there are many influencers who are like building their own like simple houses out in the middle of nowhere, and it seems so cool. There's lots of them. I saw this woman who lives a very simple life, you know, and it seems, and her videos are so tranquil. She's pouring tea and there's like nature in the background and it's beautiful. But there's much more to life than just what we're looking at on social media. And blessed are the pure in heart, simplicity in our hearts. But we live in a world of excess. We live in a world of social media, of consumerism, where society glorifies it. Oh, I'm going to get the newest and bestest new car. And sometimes we fall into, sometimes the microphone goes out as well. Sometimes we fall into this and we don't mean to fall into it because it's just the way society, the way things are set up. In this complexity, it distracts us from our moral essentials. There was a movement that became super popular, and there even is a documentary on one of these streaming platforms, maybe Netflix, about these two guys who talk all about minimalism. And it's really interesting. And there also was the advent of Marie Kondo and tidying up and her teaching about decluttering your life. And I think there even was a thing that she was most known for where you would pick something up and does this bring you joy? No, then get rid of it. So decluttering, because things can distract us. But it's not just the outside. It's not the physical necessarily. We live in a physical world, but we are spiritual beings. And we have to remember ultimately, one day we're going to die. We don't know when that day is going to come. The Spirit's book reminds us life in the body is but a passing moment. This is so temporary. If we could just distill the knowledge that we have and what's really, truly important and be more simplistic. We complicate life so much more than what we need to. We complicate life so much that in the books of Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, you can see so many cases of obsession. And when you distill the cases, it boils down to we make bad choices that lead to some consequences that aren't great. If we could simply choose to live a different way, we wouldn't suffer as much as we would. In the gospel, it says we bring on half of our own suffering. So we need to think about that. How am I complicating my life? How can I make it more simpler? I have a desire to want to have the bestest, newest car, the bestest and biggest house, and all these things. But when you get down to it, what truly makes us happy? And I'm going to be bringing this Harvard study, and the gentleman whose name I'm completely forgetting in the moment, he's the one who's the current principal investigator. There's been 4 over the last 85 years. This is the longest running study in history. It's still being done at Harvard University. It started in 1938. It started out with about 700 men. A ton of them were Harvard students, and then a lot were from a poor location in Massachusetts. They followed them from when they were young all the way up until they died. And as of today, I think there still are some original members still living, but they continue to follow the people, and now they're following their children, and they're just mapping out their lives. And they've come to the many fascinating conclusions, 8 surprising truths from this 85-year study on happiness. Quality over quantity. This is what simplicity is about. It's not about having more. It's not about the number of friends, but the depth of connection and feeling truly safe and understood in relationships. This is one of the things they found, that people in this study who were the happiest, self-reported happiest, were the ones who had friendships and connections, not in large numbers, but ones that they felt safe and understood, that they were able to, despite maybe having pain in their lives, they could derive joy and be refueled by those friendships, those connections. Have you ever had an opportunity where you're out in public and by some miracle or some chance, you have interaction with someone, and it's like a momentary interaction. It might be anywhere from 1 minute to 10 minutes, but you feel like this deep connection with them. You connect with them, and then you never see them again. But that small connection just fills up your soul, like just gave you a boost. This is connection. We are built for these connections, and this study just reaffirms that. It also showed that relationships are self-care. Tending to relationships is as crucial for health as taking care of your body. We are social beings. Simplicity doesn't mean that we need to be a monk living on or in a monastery. If that's what you wish to do, God bless you. Some people have that calling, but that's not what this means. Simplicity doesn't mean that we have to give up. You don't have to give up. Listen, if you have $1 million home, you don't have to give it up. Listen, it's okay. It's not about that. It's about knowing about what is most important in our lives, having connections. They also found that isolation is harmful. They found throughout this study that people who are more isolated than they wish to be experience earlier health decline, reduced brain function, and lived shorter lives. High conflict marriages hurt. There's a caveat here. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Don't bite my head off. I didn't bring this, okay? I did not bring this. High conflict marriages hurt. Unaffectionate, high conflict relationships can be worse for your health than getting divorced. Now, hold on. Hold on. Marriage is, say it with me, hard, challenging. Why? But it also can be, through this study, one of the most rewarding and beneficial to our health as well. They found that couples that felt safe with one another that felt connected, those couples did not develop illnesses as early as others who lived in high conflict marriages or relationships. Equally, in listening to the head of this research department, in presenting this in a podcast or at a speaking event, he said, a woman approached me and said, so you're saying, Doc, that I'm single and I'm going to die early of some disease. He said, no, it's not about that. It's not about you need to go and be married. You need to go and find someone. No, but go and have a connection with your community, with your church, with your synagogue, whatever it is, but a connection, and also living a more simple life that is distilled down to what is most important to us. It's quality over quantity. It's nourishing what's truly important to us and the people who mean the most to us. And this is really interesting. They named something called social fitness. How many people have ever gone to the gym? I'm not going to ask how many people currently go to the gym on a regular basis, but how many people have ever stepped foot into a gym or yoga studio or YMCA or something that's an equivalent to that? Okay, some people did. Cool, great, fantastic. Great, fantastic for you. Social fitness matters. Like any system, your social life needs exercise and nourishing to stay healthy and strong. What does this mean for us as spiritual beings? Well, for one, Givaldo Franco would always often talk about how when Chim Nielsen was alive, Chim Nielsen would travel with him for that companionship, to have that close-knit connection of people close to you. And it's not about having a large friend group. It's not about going to the biggest and bestest Spiritist center and thinking, oh, that Spiritist center there has 500 people. Let me go there. No, it's about nourishing the relationships in our lives that we really care about and that equally bring us joy. And don't worry, if you're an introvert, introverts can thrive. You just need a few supportive relationships enough to enhance your happiness. So how do we apply these lessons? Living a simple life. Stay connected. Make time for family, friends, and your community. They also studied, at the end, the study, what do you call them? Participants. The ones that were on their way to death, the researchers would interview the ones that were close to death and dying. And they published this research, like what were some of the top regrets of people when they were dying. One of the big ones was spending too much time at work. And they found that the people who will really remember and the people who will really remember how much time you spent at work will be your children who didn't see you. But we have to work. As a matter of fact, the law of work. But there is a balance to be had, that we make time for family, friends, and community. Oftentimes we might look at our calendar, and if it's not full of activities and things to do, we think, wow, my life is meaningless. But if you have just a few things scheduled for the people that are closest to you, that is simplicity. That can bring us joy. We often think, well, I need to take a trip to the shore, which, by the way, who loves a good beach trip during the summer? Love it. But do we need it? You know, something I learned from being married for Yeah, a little over a decade, maybe 15. I don't know. I lost count. You lose count. You know what I mean? You just lose count. Is that my husband always says two things. Do we really need that? And life is so simple. We complicate it. And it's truly true because one, as consumers, we need to ask ourselves, do I really need this? Or is it a want? Am I buying this to fulfill a space? You don't have to raise your hand, but you can raise your hand like in your mind. If you've ever experienced the need for retail therapy, it's probably more on the female ends of the spectrum. I don't know that men experience that. There's also food as a form of comfort as well. All those things are just taking the place temporarily. They are clutter in our lives. What we need to do is distill down, hunker down, and think about what's most important. Mending fences, reaching out and reconnecting with people and even old friends. Forgiveness, even if the person's passed away, and forgiveness of yourself as well. Cultivating empathy. Be curious about others and focus on understanding them. We found this really interesting as a researcher talked about what this means, cultivating empathy. Even with friends who you've been friends with for 30 years, you set a date with them to go and have coffee and really be curious and interested about their lives. That also is feeding, can be spiritual food to somebody else, helping them feel important in your life and important in general. And just trying to cultivate the empathy of understanding others. The practice of gratitude, this has been studied again and again. We know that practicing gratitude daily and having an active practice is good for us. Expressing appreciation strengthens bonds and boosts well-being. Last but not least, finding purpose. This is so important. Having goals in our lives, having a purpose, helps us feel connected. Oftentimes, there are a lot of people on this planet that experience loneliness. But loneliness has nothing to do with the amount of people, because you could be in a room full of every person you've ever known, of all your family members, and you could still feel so totally, completely alone. Loneliness is the absence of connectedness. And Dr. Gabor Mate, famous physician and researcher, he's done a lot of work in the field of trauma and healing. He says that, I actually have a quote, but I won't pull it up now, but this connectedness, this loneliness is exactly that. It's not that we don't have a person next to me, because there are people that are lonely in marriages. It's that lack of connection. To those who were happier and healthier were those who were volunteering, just as one thing can connect you with like-minded and provide meaning. Goal setting and making more of an effort to connect to those in your lives. We experienced something recently, truly a spiritual growth moment, when we were with our children. And if you ever had little kids, if you ever had more than one, it's the wild, wild west. Let me tell you, folks, it's crazy times. But there are two positions you can take. You take the position where you are a bystander and you simply watch them. And there's merit in that and allowing them to play and observing them. But there's something so important about our purpose as guardians, as parents, as aunts, as uncles, as teachers, as whoever, to interact with young children and to offer positive affirmations, and just getting down and playing with them. When Jesus said, I think it was, suffer the little children to come unto me. There's something so beautiful in the simplicity of children. And for us to sit with kids and see how simple, and looking at how things can be so simple through their eyes. It's a great wake-up call for us to be reminded of simplicity. And it's not about gaining so much knowledge, but it's more about the moral progress. The intellectual progress will come as well, but it's about that moral progress, that inner reform, those changes we make within inside of ourselves. And in the gospel, they say the true spiritist is recognized by his moral transformation. And we can apply this to anyone. We can be recognized by our moral transformation. And one of the greatest compliments anybody can ever give you is, you've changed. You've changed. Oh, I hope so. Some people might take it as a slight, or their ego might be coming out and say, well, what do you mean I've changed? No, it's a positive thing. If I encounter a friend who I haven't seen in 20 years, and we begin having a conversation, they're like, wow, you really changed. And I've had this said to me. And you have to be willing to forgive the parts of yourself when you weren't at your best. Because there will be days that we will not get this 100% right. In fact, expect it, but forgive yourself and move on from it. Don't focus on it. And often we paint the villain as the ego, but let us be reminded from Joanna and all of her works, the ego has its place. It's a part in us that protects us. Its goal is to protect us. Okay? But it comes a point where we need to ask our ego to step to the side so our self, with a capital S, can shine through. Because the ego wants to be selfish. It wants to think only of itself. When my ego is active, I'm only thinking of me. And that ultimately, it's going to delay our happiness. Simplicity frees the soul. If you've ever decluttered a room, you feel like a weight lifted off of you. Imagine what it's like to declutter your mind, to work through and just distill down what's most important. We make life more complex than it needs to be. Today I yelled at my son pretty harshly, my 7-year-old. And some might say it was warranted because he was being a wild child. And then I instructed him to go downstairs to his father because, I get to do that. But as soon as he left, I had that soul crushing, feeling of something called mother's guilt. And it can be so soul crushing. And immediately, for the first time in a very long time, I caught myself. And I said, wait, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I'm going to go apologize. I could have handled that better. I was reacting out of my own, wanting to rush. And I apologize later, but it's important that we catch ourselves as these things are happening in our minds, because that guilt can then linger, and then I make my life so much more difficult because then I begin to carry all this guilt, and it becomes so intense. And it's really funny because there's this comedian who recently has blown up. Some of you might know who he is, some of you might not. His name is Marcelo Hernandez. He's on Saturday Night Live, and he does this bit about his mother, about his parents. His mother's Cuban, his father's from the Dominican Republic. When his mother was 12, she fled Cuba with her family with nothing, and moved to Miami, had a whole life, and now like they're all good. Everyone's good. But he said, growing up, because my mother grew up in Cuba during the time of Castro and all the things and, all the struggles, he said, depression, oh, I didn't have that. That wasn't, he said, when I came to my mom, I said, Mommy, I think I have depression. She's like, depression? I'll tell you depression. Depression is this, and I didn't have this. So it's funny, but at the same time, it's interesting because on both ends of the spectrum, looking at how, and they've actually interviewed his mother a couple times. You can find out on the internet. It's really interesting. I was really curious to see, was she a mother that carried guilt? But she isn't. She said, and an interview asked her, because her son basically has said all these things about her, how I think his whole childhood, how mommy was, and she was this and this, and he said, I tried to have ADD once, but mommy said I didn't have it, so I don't have ADD. So he said, so my friends were lucky; they were allowed to have ADD. Me, I wasn't allowed to have ADD. No, it didn't happen. Not in my Cuban mother's household. So the point is that when his mother was being interviewed, and the interviewer was like, so you hear your son, you hear him say all these things, like, do you feel bad as a mom? Like, ooh. And she said, honestly, I wish I could do her Cuban accent. So beautiful. I can't though. She said, honestly, I did my best with what I could do. And I love my children. He has a sister, I believe. And I gave them my love, and I provided for them, and I don't feel bad about anything. And I thought that was amazing, because so many of us would take on that guilt, like, oh my gosh, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I probably should have done this, but like different. And you know what? We have to catch ourselves. So you know what? I did the best that I can do with the resources that I had at that time, and that's it. And move on from it. Because ultimately, as I digress back to shedding the ego, and perhaps I could have said it better, not shedding the ego, but asking the ego to step aside, because we need our ego. Without our ego, we would become schizophrenics. The ego is an important part of us. But there are parts of us that get in the way of our own evolution. We have that inner self, that inner deep self, that inner knowing. And it is that inner part of us that is not selfish, that is compassionate, that is curious, that is kind. Because selfishness, as the Spirit's book says, is the source of all vices. Why am I jealous? Because something is mine. I don't want that person to have it. Selfishness. I'm angry someone cut me off in traffic. Why am I angry? Because someone got in my way of where I wanted to go. Selfish. Pride and selfishness keeps us the farthest from God and the farthest from our happiness. So living simply in a complex world, charity in thought, word, and action, it is a daily task. I tell you, it is a daily task to take on, To catch yourself while you're in the act of thinking is an art form. It takes practice. We are creatures of habit. We are creatures of thinking the same way we've always thought, and that's the way we think, and that's the end of it. And some of us will die on that hill, and that's it. And we remember our father being that way until the big C came to his life. Well, first it was a major heart attack in his 50s, and then the big C in his 70s. And that was life-altering. He was a man who was of conviction, typically known in the north of Brazil. Men, they say stereotypically, are very hard-headed, are set in their ways and think a certain way, and roles in society should be what they are. And that's how he was. Good man, but stubborn. But when the big C came into his life and deteriorated his body, I could see such a change in him, in the ways and the way he spoke, in his actions, and in the way he thought about things. And one big lesson we took from that is don't wait for a disease to come into your life to have to remind you what is really important in life, what is worth investing in. Being consistent over appearance. It's not about making things look better for others. It's about doing what's right because it's the right thing to do. And we've all heard this statement before: without charity, there's no salvation. Look, in Spiritism, we don't have this dogmatic idea where we have to claim Jesus as our Lord and Savior in order for us to be saved and be taken up after the rapture. And this charity, without charity, there's no salvation. The salvation they're actually talking about here is a salvation from our own internal hell. We can become so fixated on the bad things we've done, previous lives as well. We don't have memory of it, but we have emotional memory. We become fixated on ideas, fixated on things that we've done wrong, fixated on thinking of things a certain way. And we complicate our lives unknowingly. We're not bad people for it. It just happens sometimes. But this charity, what does charity do? What does charity do to us? Abby. With charity makes us feel better. We stop thinking about our problems. We think less about ourselves and more about others. And there's also a component of connectedness, feeling connected. Charity is a huge component nowadays in modern day science and therapies. It is so good for us to volunteer, to step outside of ourselves and do for others. And just some takeaways to live simply. Speak simply. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Avoid gossip, drama, and trying to sound important. To be authentic, be honest and kind. Just be who you are. Be you. Having moved from the private sector to the public sector, we experienced a huge shift in the language that our colleagues used. And it's very, for lack of a better way to put it, kind of scary and intimidating, because you're going into this new world and everyone's using really big words like year over year. and other things. Like there's a ton of things I could say. And then in our simplistic mind, I saw both ways of living. It's great, it's fantastic to have a vocabulary that's amazing, that's beautiful, and you can read all the greats. And I love reading Mary Oliver and Goethe and Walt Whitman and the beauty. But actually, when you read a lot of these famous greats, there's a simplicity to them and their words when they speak. I digress. Live with enough. Ask yourself this question. Do I really need this the next time you go out to TJ Maxx, to Home Goods, shop on Amazon? Do I really need this, or do I want it? Do I really need it, or do I want it? Do I really need a helmet that has Bluetooth that could tell me who's behind me? Poking fun at some friends. Stop chasing more. Look at what you already have and be grateful for it. If you don't need it, don't let it take up space in your house or your head. There's a saying in Portuguese, what the heart doesn't see, what is it? Mind doesn't want. What the eyes don't see, the heart doesn't want. Something like that. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Does somebody want to say that more clearly to the mic? Well, in other words, no English. What the eyes don't see, the heart won't feel. So close that laptop, get off Amazon, get off social media. No, you don't need that beach house. No, you don't need to have a third car. No, but and I find this in our children, and it's amazing because it's very clear that it's happening in our kids, and without us noticing it, it's happening in us as well. But I noticed that our two middle kids, 5 and 7, they'll be watching an ad on TV for some new toy, and then they'll go, oh, I want that. And every new ad, and I hate ads because every toy is, oh, I need that. Mommy, I need that. Oh, it's the new magnets. I need it. Oh, it's this new Play-Doh. It's kinetic, and I can throw it up in the sky, and it comes down, and like, oh my goodness. No, you don't need it. Let go quickly. This is the biggest thing. As things are happening, catching yourself in the thought process. It takes time to learn this. It takes constant self-awareness and evaluation of our thoughts and how I'm thinking. But this can mean the difference between falling to a mental health crisis or moving on with our lives. And once again, the personal anecdote. I remember when my father first passed away, the day he passed away, and being at my childhood home, and waiting for the coroner to come and get his body, and my mind was like all over the place. I think I was a little bit lost, and so I go down to the basement, and my parents had kept like hundreds of like books and papers that are spiritists and all kinds of things. And I just started rummaging. I don't know what I'm doing. I was rummaging, and I somehow came across some really old looking book from Joanna de Angelis. And I just opened it and I read it. It's in Portuguese. And it said something like, whatever has happened, whatever time has passed, let it go. Don't think about what you could have done, what you should have done. Acknowledge in gratitude for today and what is, and the good that you've experienced. And that small moment of reading, I attribute to helping me in my grieving process. Because at the time going to see my father, I saw him when he had already passed. It had been some time that I hadn't seen him. for a multitude of reasons. And that guilt comes on strong. But in that moment, reading Joanna, it helped me recognize, listen, what is. What's done is done. What's past is past. Forgive, move on, and don't carry that with you because we can hold ourselves back. Notice the little things. St. Francis of Assisi was really good at modeling this. Stop and look at a flower, the sky, or smile. Relearn how to be amazed by the world. Find joy in what is free and natural. So many times, many of us might think, especially if you come from a poor country where you grow up with farm animals and wide open spaces and not with a lot of things or stuff. Like life is really house, a hammock, and food from day to day. Sometimes yes, sometimes who knows when it's going to come. So you grow up and you have money and you have all these things, and so you don't like the idea of living simply or having chickens because that thought reminds us of when we were poor. Sometimes that can happen to us. But there's something so beautiful about the simplicity of nature. Going on a walk in nature, looking at the sky. I remember the first time I saw the sky in Brazil, I was enamored. In Spanish, I was encantada, right? I blew my mind. I don't know what it was. I don't know whether it was because of the location, but it just seemed, or because we were in an area where there wasn't a lot of light pollution, as they call it. But I saw the sky I had never seen in my entire life. And I thought, my God. And that really does something to you. It, makes you take a step back and breathe and think and be reminded that I am but one small person, but at the same time, so important before God and so loved. And sometimes it just takes that step for us to walk out in nature, to return to a simple way of doing things. Try a detox. Get out of all your social media, delete everything for 3 months. I'm going on about 6 months now, I think. It's absolutely wonderful. Beautiful. Love it. Maybe that doesn't fit everybody, but try something different and go outside. And when you're with your family, your loved one, or your kids, put your phone to the side. It's so easy to be on that phone and it's just a habit. But there's something beautiful in the connections, in the simple connections we can make with one another. Looking someone eyeball to eyeball and asking them, how are they doing? So we're going to end this with this short prayer. And this is a prayer you can say as you wake up in the morning. And I'm going to ask Daniel to play some soft music. And this will serve as our moment of meditation. And we love the water, and it's so symbolic. And there's a famous, I don't know how famous it is, but there's a quote that we found by this physician, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. He's a professor of medicine. He's a pioneer in mindfulness. And mindfulness-based stress reduction. And he has this quote that I think is so appropriate to share. And he says, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf." You can't stop the waves and the things happening in our lives, but we can learn to surf and just go with it, to enjoy the beauty of the ocean, however crazy the ocean and unpredictable it can be. Stop and appreciate the beauty of it, the vastness of it. As with our lives, and perhaps tomorrow as you begin your day, think about this prayer. Today, help me, God, to walk lightly and speak with honesty. Let me set aside the heavy weight of pride and the noise of wanting more. I open my heart to the beauty of small things and trust that I have everything I need. Dear ones, may we open up our hearts. May we have the courage to live simply, to live lovingly, to live with gratitude and empathy, to focus on the beauty in this world. May we have the courage to surf the waves of life and not focus on all the times we fall, but let us get back up again and again with a smile, with an open heart. And let us always be ready to serve, offer help to others, whether it's a kind word, a hug, a warm text, or even a phone call, to tell someone that you love them or that you were thinking of them. Let us be reminded that all these things are charity in action. Dear God, help our hearts to be open to these new ideas and ways of living, to embrace the virtues, to strive for them, and to choose happiness, to choose joy, knowing that pain may be there, but joy can still be experienced. We thank you, dear Jesus, dear spirit mentors and benefactors, for this moment. May your heavenly blessings, your good vibrations fall upon each one of us and help each one of us in our own way in which we may need. May we be reminded that we are children of God, deserving of love and happiness. We thank you, and so be it.